Good morning, Allison.
Good morning, Susan. Happy summer.
Yes, we are back in our homes and at our regular scheduled time. And yeah, right right in the midst of glorious summer days. School is out,
Yeah.
graduations are probably over.
Yeah, graduations are always a rush, although I did not have one this year. So that was helpful for me. And I have one of my kids home, and the other one is working out of state for a month for the summer. But it's really nice to have one home. He walks in and it's like our house is full. It's loud. He has a presence in the house. So it's nice. And all the other kids coming in and out. It just feels nice. It's a different pace in the summer. So
Awesome.
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're generally around this summer too. I don't really have a big vacation plan, which kind of bums me out, but a few days in Seattle, that's about it. How about you?
Yeah, I don't have any plans for vacation this year. I'm dedicating my time to working on my personal projects as well as client stuff. Um, I should say client stuff first and then my personal project.
For all the listeners, just know your stuff comes ahead of Susan's.
But I am making great progress on my own, and I'm enjoying the memory lane, journey that one takes as they go through their prints and stuff. And so I've been sharing ad nauseum baby pictures of my nephew, who's now 40, 39, 40.
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Oh, that is a cute one. Did you do something to my head? Because my head was really large." I'm like, "Ha ha ha. No, that's how it looked back
He
then."
just had a big
Yeah,
head.
he still does.
That's actually really funny because my kids have this thing when they take pictures of us, of me, that if they're in the picture with me, they try and make me look as small as possible. And I
Oh gosh.
actually well, by the time this airs, the post, you'll have to, on my social feed, you'll have to scroll back a little bit because it's going to post the week of taping. But it's every single time. One of them will stand really, really tall and look down so that I look like I'm about 2 feet tall. I mean, both my kids are just about one's 6 feet and the other one's almost, and I am not. So it's quite funny. It's quite funny when you look back at these. Anyway, I wasn't really going to bring that up today, but you mentioned the big head and the funny kid thing. So, I mean, the focus of today, though, in this horrible segue, is Apple Photos. You and I both, I think, get a lot of questions about Apple Photos. We have a lot of clients in Apple Photos. And when they did that big redesign last year-ish, I don't remember the exact timing, there was a
Mhm.
lot of concern isn't really the right word, but annoyance. People couldn't figure out what they were doing.
Well,
So we
it's a case of who moved my cheese, right? Did you ever read that book?
I did read that book. Everything's still there, but nobody can find it anymore.
Right. It just
Yeah.
shuffled it around. So,
Yeah. So, and we've had questions personally. We've also had questions that people have sent in to the podcast. And so we have one from Melody from Crawfordsville. I had to look over my notes. Crawfordsville, Indiana, not super far from me, asking about Apple's shared library. So we figured, okay, we're getting enough. It's time to do another whole episode on Apple Photos. And we can't do that without bringing in our good friend Paul Einarsen, who is our former Genius Bar and current personal Genius Bar for Apple Photos.
come on
So here
on,
he
Paul.
is. Welcome, welcome, Paul. Let's see if you can top
Uh,
that intro.
it's wonderful. I'll just sit here and listen to you for a while, if I stay off camera. So
Then
anyway,
your head's going to get big too.
yeah, well, thanks so much for the
Yeah, but
introduction.
if you could introduce yourself a little bit more. I mean, I'm assuming that everybody's listened to all of our podcasts, which you all should, and has heard the first one that we did with you. But in case not, can you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit.
Absolutely. So thanks so much for having me on again. It's always fun to hang with you guys. So I have been an Apple user since '92. I think I got my Apple C something two, and have been a fanboy ever since. But really, in the last 2 decades, I ended up at Apple as an Apple genius and a creative trainer, which is a lot of fun, meeting Apple users who are trying to figure it out and also enthusiastic and all that. And I learned a lot about both Apple Photos and how important pictures are to everybody. It was really kind of an eye opener, and started me on a more professional career of helping people as a photo manager, and honestly being a little bit of an evangelist for the Apple ecosystem, um, just because there's so much value there. And, this day and age, it's really nice to get a smile or two in the course of a day, just from looking at these pictures that pop up in various ways. So anyway, that career has taken me into working with the photo managers. I'm on the advisory board, as you are, Allison, and it's really been a rewarding time for me. But the my focus has really been kind of wrangling the Apple Photos ecosystem as it's become, honestly, a lot more complex than it used to be. We used to, I used to really promote the Apple Photos path just because it was so accessible to people at a time when everything out there was very professionally based. It was more complicated. It required more hardware. People were transitioning from um, digital cameras. I mean, so you didn't even have the convenience of having your photos automatically sync, here and there. So a lot of steps along the way. But to your point earlier, one of the really big shakeups I've seen in the last 4 or 5 years, really, was when they changed the interface for Apple Photos on the iPhone. Because, let's face it, most people are dealing with their photos on their iPhone. And that's where they experience it every day. So it did throw a lot of sand in the in the mix. And
But I
so, right,
mean, when you think about it, I'm just going to say,
yeah,
in order to move the development forward, Apple has to shake things up occasionally.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's, historically they've done it fairly sensibly, and I actually think this was a really long overdue
Yeah.
move.
Yeah.
But Apple also does not manage the transitions as well as I wish they could. I mean, the whole thing moving from iPhoto to photos, there were a lot of really good reasons to do that,
Hmm.
but it really damaged a lot of people in the process who went on to try other software or just never regained their trust in Apple. And I'm sorry about that. But I think I think it certainly is time for a lot of reasons to revisit photos, and also now to sort of take a deep breath and say, we're in a period of time now when the technology is changing daily, and it's kind of the way of the world, for photographers of all stages. So anyway, I think it's very cool for reasons we can talk about. But I encourage people to really give it a try and to enjoy their photos.
Yeah, I think once you get used to it, it is nice. I actually agree. It's a really good update. I think the problem that I see and that I have people calling me for all the time is there's very little documentation about how to do the new things. It seems like, I mean, you have to go looking for it. Apple seems to
Right.
to make changes and just assume that everyone will automatically, intuitively know what to do, which sometimes is true. But essentially, you need to either not ignore the when you update your iPhone and you get that little like help thing that comes up and shows you what's new. I think most people ignore that. Um,
Yeah.
so either you need to not ignore that, or you need to go looking. But I don't think it takes that long to get used to the new features and the new layout.
Right.
Well, the
Um,
fact that they allow you to customize it is
Yeah.
really
yeah.
awesome. And that's what we, we hope to share with our listening audiences, the reorder and customize options at the bottom. So what are your favorite features, Paul?
My no, number one is pinned collections. I mean, I just the to your point, those of us who are using professional apps um, are used to being able to customize the look and feel of it.
Hmm.
We've been doing that for years, and so even something as complicated as Photoshop, if you if you know how to customize the look and feel of it, you can actually slim it down and make it quite usable, more user friendly. And I think well, pretty much all of the professional apps that I'm familiar with have some feature like that.
And so what you're talking about is the ability to change all the toolbars and the feature set that you may see. So you
Yes,
can remove all the unnecessary tools you're not going to get into and just have a cleaner GUI or graphic user interface for when you're working with that piece of software.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Well said.
Yeah, you do have to find it first though, because when they first did the redesign, it drove me bonkers. I couldn't find the map. And then I
Yes,
finally found where that was, and now it's pinned because the
yeah,
map is something that I use a lot. So I think that goes a little bit back to they do this big redesign, but don't tell anybody how to use it.
yeah.
But yeah,
Uh,
but the pins are they're important because not everybody uses the map. If you never use the map, you don't need to have it front and center.
right.
Facial recognition, up to you,
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's true. I think it was a brilliant concept, and it looks like they're going to be tweaking it even a little more in the next iteration. But I think way back in the day, we used to sort chronologically. We were pretty much living in the photo library, the camera roll view. A lot of people have never gone to any of the other stuff. I think I like the memories, automatic memories that pop up. I run into things that I've totally forgotten about, which I think is part of the delight. I think a photo library should have a sense of discovery to it. Otherwise, it's just a catalog. So there are a lot of great features in there, but clearly features that a lot of people have never used. And I think that was part. I mean, it certainly is part of the upgrade. But I think the pinned collections. I mean, there are now um, a zillion what they call collections, which are essentially a custom search. Is really all they are. And when I counted last, there now are about 40 ways that you can get at a picture, assuming it fits into one of those. So, it's not the most user friendly scenario that they used to have. But if you're willing to take a few minutes and scroll down through the different collections that are now on the iPhone,
The
you'll
automated ones.
the automated ones, you'll
Right.
see things that you probably heard about a while back, but you never really figured out which tab to go to get to it. So you never bothered going to it. You know, um,
yeah, that's true. It,
So the pinned collections allows you to sort of cherry pick the things that you use regularly to find your pictures
Like maps.
and have them, yeah, like maps, exactly, and have them right there
Yeah.
at the bottom of your photo your camera roll. And I think it really is more efficient.
Yeah, it took me a bit to get used to them because I actually think a lot of the collections that it created, I actually don't care one whit about, but I use
Yeah.
my photos a little differently. But there were some in there that I did like. I do also love the memories. Although
Mhm.
sometimes the ones it picks and puts together are a little bit odd and not necessarily the way I would do it. But
Right. Right.
it's a great starting point. It does remind you of things. And I do think that, for people who don't use the search so
Hmm.
much, it amazes me how many people don't know that you can search for almost anything. Everybody listening, put in a little search for like birthday cake. And
Yeah.
you will
Yeah.
find all of these photos of various, birthday celebrations that you've gone to because the AI will pick up a candle or some other clues and put it in there. But a lot of people don't know that exists.
Right.
And so the
Right.
collections sort of help with that and push in that direction.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that is really helpful. Um, you know, to your point too, I think some people may be reluctant to simply delete some of the collections. Uh, as always, anything that happens except for no, anything that happens sort of below the camera roll is simply a view of your photos. You're not, if you delete trips, from your collection, you're not deleting the photos in the trips. All you're doing is getting rid of that particular view. And if it's something you never use and it seems like clutter to you, go ahead.
Yeah, that's true. You don't need to see. You can also create your own. There's this, it doesn't take
Mhm.
away the ability to create albums. So
Exactly.
if the trips
Exactly.
don't, yeah, if the trips don't line up properly, I don't need a trip every time I leave Illinois and go to Indiana.
Right.
It's generally not a trip that I want to save, so I don't really need that. But I create albums for my things I consider actual trips, and there's no reason why you can't still do that.
Hmm.
It's just that Apple's giving you these other options that you don't have to do any work
Right.
to look
Right.
at.
And I think what both for any user, but also for the photo management community, things like trips, which is new to this new layout, um, gives us a way to start a curated collection, which then becomes an album. So I think for people who've been struggling to organize their photos, some of these collections are really handy ways to kind of cut to the chase and say, okay, well, these things I really want to have as a curated album, and then the album can go in your pin collections, and so you sort of close the loop. Um,
I've spoken with several people that don't even use albums. I mean, they just like to scroll through their photos. And then on the other hand, I have people that, prefer to use albums and wonder, is there a way to get rid of the camera roll? Like they
Oh yeah.
like they just want to go to, groups that they've created. And I'm like, well, it doesn't work that way. You have to start with your original, and then the albums is where Apple will put a virtual copy of that file. So
right.
you can delete an album and still have all your photos, but you can't delete the photos in your camera roll. So,
Right, right. And
That's actually a super important point, Susan,
yes,
super
because it comes
important.
up with, and this isn't just Apple, this comes up with literally every photo organization software is it has to keep a copy of your stuff. And whether they call it the camera roll or whatever similar, anytime you make an album or there is a collection, you can delete things out of a collection, you can delete the collection itself, but it's not going to take it off your phone. It's not going to take
Right.
it out of your camera roll. And people do forget that all the time, or they do the flip side and they go to the camera roll because they think, well, I've put all of these 10 photos that I want to keep out of this 100, I have put in this safe little album over here or this collection. So I'm just going to go in and delete them from my camera roll.
Right.
And I've seen that as well because if you do that, then you are actually deleting your photos. Now there's decent warnings about it when you're doing that. You know, do you want to delete blah blah blah, or do you want to remove it from an album? But just know that if you delete from your camera roll, you are deleting it everywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Um,
And again, we're just going to emphasize that Apple Photos is, if you've set it up, could potentially be backing up to their iCloud. But when I say backup, it makes a copy and it can optimize the space on your device, on your iPhone or iPad. But it's it's a sync. So whatever you're doing on that one device, it that those actions are then taking place in the cloud. So therefore, you delete something on that phone, it deletes it from the cloud. You no longer have a backup.
Yeah. And I think to both your points, I really encourage people anytime a dialogue pops up,
Read it.
read
please
it.
read it because, um, Apple, back in the day, we did not have automatic sync. And it was, if we had,
On
if
demand, right?
yeah, and so we literally had to manually sync our phones to the computer, and
Yeah.
everybody forgot to do that, and so everything was only on their phone, and and then they got an iPad, and then they had two computers, and then and people who never lived through that really don't appreciate the overhead that grows exponentially if you don't have this syncing environment. And pretty much any, I mean, Google does the same thing. I mean, any of these systems are doing some kind of that, and you really have to because I just in one of my newsletters I was just coming up with an example, and it's like if you're out whale watching and you drop your phone in the water, at least you have that last picture you took of the humpback um, in iCloud that you
If you
can
had internet
if
while
you
you're
if
whale
Yeah. If
watching.
you have internet, yeah.
if you have internet.
Yeah.
But it's that idea. I mean, the system is really good, and um, the the problem I think is simply that we get so fast and we get so desperate at getting space or something like that we can
Well,
do things without thinking.
I have a very uh, specific comment in regards to that. I was on a trip in Italy and we were visiting Pompeii. And one of the other people on the cruise with me is a friend that I've been on other trips with, and she goes, can you take a couple of pictures of me? And I said, okay. And then I used my phone and I took some pictures of her as well. And then, we started talking about photos and everything. And I was just getting started in this business a few years ago. And so, what do? You always talk to everybody about what you do and how you can help them. And so I was saying, you're backing up your photos, right? And she's like, no, they're all on the device. And I was like, really? I can help you get this set up so that at least this trip stuff, is now being protected. No, 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 I'm okay. She kind of, you know, waved me off or whatever. And we finish up the cruise. I fly back home, and now she's continued her trip beyond the cruise and has joined another friend, and now they're in Venice. I get a panicked message. My phone went into the drink, into the canal. And could you
Ah,
send me some pictures from Pompeii? So I don't know if my
yeah.
message was premonition, trying to prevent an accident or what, but I totally thought, okay, I did the best I could right in the moment. So, if somebody's offering to help you, maybe you should take a minute and see what what they can offer. So, and honestly, if cost is a factor, you need to figure out another way if you can't afford 99 cents a month to get
Yeah.
started with Apple iCloud, just saying. You need to get an external hard drive, learn how to get the data off your phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably from 3 years at the Genius Bar. I mean, the stuff that we saw,
Oh yeah.
what you can't make it up. I mean,
No.
it's people who get pushed into a pool at a party. It's
Hmm.
people who leave their iPad on top of their car when they back out of the garage and drive down the freeway.
Well, it's
Uh,
it's
you know,
heartbreaking. My neighbor behind me, when I started this business, she told me early on using an iPhone, she didn't quite understand the whole sync and backup, and she thought it was backing up and she could delete the items on her phone, and she lost years of her childhood, not
yeah,
her child, but her children's childhood photos. And she was
yeah,
devastated and just felt like, you know, because of her not understanding what was going on, there was nothing that Apple could do because by the time she realized what had happened, the 30 days or whatever the storage
yeah,
limit is that it clears it out and of trash was gone.
yeah.
So, there's only so much that Apple can do to recover things. So you need to make sure that you get that stuff backed up. But yeah, I'm sure you
Yeah.
and I have, Allison, have seen a lot of this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so let's do a quick wrap up of that just because we've talked
yeah,
about a lot of it and I want to make sure it's absolutely
sure.
clear. I'll just do it for iPhone because this is or Apple because this is an Apple podcast today. But essentially, every time you take a photo on your phone, it is on your phone. You should set up iCloud. If you don't have it turned on, you can go into your settings and you can turn it on. And then what happens is that photo will go into iCloud storage where it can stay. You can then decide whether you also want to keep an original on your phone. These are all settings inside of your settings on your iPhone. You can decide if you want to keep the original photo on your phone and have it in the cloud, in which case you have it in two different places. But that takes up a lot of storage space in your phone, and most people don't have phones big enough to hold all the photos they take. So most people have it set so that they take photos on their phone, they go to iCloud. iCloud is set to optimize the photos on your phone, which means it's just leaving little thumbnails so you can see them, but the real copy is in the cloud. That way, you at least, if your phone goes in the drink, all of your photos are backed up in the cloud. But if you delete photos from your phone, they will delete in iCloud unless you are also backing them up another way.
Elsewhere.
So there is our little backup talk for today, and go back and see our other episodes like Peter Crow. We talk about backup all the
All
time.
the time. Yep.
But make sure if that sounds like gobbledygook to you and you have no idea what we're talking about, you need to go in and check your settings or have somebody help you and make sure that your photos are being backed up in some way, shape, or form.
And we're here
Yeah.
to help you.
Yeah, we can. Of course, we can all do it too. All three of us can
Yeah,
help you too. But the important thing is, just double check these things. I guess that leads to the next question, at which we did send Paul a few questions in advance, but one of them is where are people most likely to get tripped up with the new Apple redesign? And I actually would say the biggest trip up is the one we just mentioned, is
Yep.
not understanding how your photos are, where and how they are stored. But moving beyond that, Paul, what are the things with the new Apple Photos redesign? Where are people getting confused and tripped up and frustrated?
I in my experience, most of it's sort of this, as you said, who moved the cheese. It's like a lot of the pieces are still there, but they look different. The way that I sort of position it really is, back in the day when we'd go to a website, we used to follow a bunch of links to get to all the different information that we were used to. These days, when you go to a website, they tend to be very flat. Usually you go to the website and you just start scrolling down, and you will find, oh, that's here, that's there, and if there are links, they usually lead to someplace else on the page. That's kind of what Apple has really done in this redesign is they took things that were hidden in the tabs at the bottom of the iPhone screen, and they basically brought them forward and then scattered them, below. And I think that, they look different. It's a little confusing. And I think most people at this stage of the game, they have what now is almost 3 decades of habits of seeing a whole line of photos and swiping to browse for the photo that they're looking for. I mean, we've sort of been conditioned to do that because it's so cool to be able to swipe these pictures on your phone,
And you
right?
still can.
And you
I mean,
still
that's not
can.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
No,
still can.
you still can, for sure. But when you had 2,000 photos, it wasn't a really long trip. When you have 30,000, it becomes more. So I think the fact that it looks different and the fact that we're sort of habitually used to swiping and scrolling to find pictures, it probably minimizes the adventurism that some of us feel when we go through this. And so I think that's really the big thing. I encourage people um, to explore a little bit. And actually, there's back to the new features. One of the new collection concepts that I love is recently. We never had recently before. And so it used to be we thought of time as sort of an absolute. Oh, I have to go find my thing from February. I'm pretty sure it was in February someplace, right? Um, Now, and I sort of teach this because we now have essentially two types of searching. We have the legacy stuff, right? We're making a photo book, we're doing a memory piece for a milestone birthday, or we have a graduation or something like that. And so we're basically scouring through a lot of different things to get there. But more often than not, we're doing social sharing. And so it's like going out for lunch, or it's like, meeting your in laws, or it's one of those things. And inevitably, it's, hey, I want to show this picture of my grandkid's first steps, or I got to show you this picture that we took at, wherever, kind of thing. And so then you start seeing the doom scrolling of going, I know that's here, whatever, right? Well, so
I can
what
say sometimes I'm guilty of that as well,
Oh, we
especially if
all
I
are.
haven't.
we all are,
We all are, yeah.
because I think again, it's because of this habit that has been built in where we're used to doing it.
Right.
It's like, oh, it can't take me long to find it, right? But the pictures are little and the light isn't that good, and there's a zillion reasons. And by the time you find it, the conversation has moved on, and it's like,
And they're
oh,
like, oh, wait, here it is.
but
And
here,
then
yeah,
everyone else is like, what are you talking about?
that's right. So
Totally.
so so what I love about recently is in social situations, most of the time you're sharing photos that you've just experienced one way or another. And so now they have recently saved and they have recently viewed. And so what I encourage people to do is when they know that they're going to lunch, or they know they're going to see relatives or something, I say just take 5 minutes, go into your library, and just literally tap the photos that are most important to you, that are going to come up, because we know, right? And now with recently viewed, you literally in like one step can go to recently viewed, tap on it, and there's the last 6 pictures that you looked at, and you're the hero, right?
This could be
um
the tip of the day. right there.
It really, once you get used to
Yeah.
it, in fact, if you want to get really exotic about it, you can find those 5 photos and you can make an album that you also put in your pinned collections. And so you can have these little things in pinned collections that are right there. They're relevant. They're current, and you know, people I think feel a sense of permanence to albums, but albums are, you can use them today and get rid of them tomorrow to save your clutter, and it doesn't change anything. So
Yeah.
I think the what I see is this whole new layout simply gives us a new way to think about how we find our photos and how we use our photos, and I think it's very cool. The thing about the recently stuff is it's buried in a utilities collection. So you have to go to utilities first and find it, and then you can move it into your pin collections where it's front and center. But
I was
anyway,
sitting here thinking, well, I
Yeah.
see it right there, so I must have already done that.
Yeah, I
there
think I
you
did
go.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I don't think people use albums enough, and they don't use the little favorite button. Like literally the little favorite tap
The heart
is
icon.
the heart is the simplest thing you can do. Because I mean,
Yep.
everybody knows when you take a picture and you look at it, you know that's going to be one of your favorites.
Right.
You just do.
yeah,
And favorite doesn't have to mean this is my very best photo. Favorite literally just means I want to be able to find this again later.
Yep.
yeah,
And I don't think
yeah,
enough people do that, nor do
Right.
they use albums. I'm not a fan of people who like feel the need to put every single photo that they have in an album. I think it sort of
right,
defeats the purpose
yeah,
and would be a whole lot of work. But for things that you are looking for often,
mm-hmm.
favorite them, put them in an album, pin that album and collection, like just keep it at the forefront.
And to your point, favorites are better than sitting there trying to delete a bunch of unwanted.
Yes.
Yeah,
Because you could spend hours deleting stuff and still not get to the point of enjoying your photos. So
Yeah.
think about doing the opposite and like the things that you are enjoying in your camera roll so you can quickly get to them just by clicking favorites.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I
No,
usually teach a combo of both, actually. I start with just like your favorites, but at the same time, for people who, you get a group photo or something, you take 10 of them,
Oh yeah,
mm-hmm.
you do have to review
So
those.
I like at the same time as when you first look at them and you're looking for the best one to share with the other people in the group, share that one and delete the rest right while you're there, because a year from now when you're looking back for that photo, you're going to come across those 10 all over again and you're going to have to make decisions again. So I'm a
Right,
big proponent of just, find the ones you like and favorite those and don't worry necessarily about deleting everything if you don't have time, except in that situation,
Yeah.
because
yeah,
it
yeah,
happens over and over and over again. So moving to sharing,
Yes.
because, I'm all about the segue. I think the sharing question is super important. It comes up all the time. It's one of the
Hmm.
reasons we asked you to come back because, we had a listener question about it. And there are multiple ways to share out of Apple. So let's sort of run through a few different scenarios.
mm-hmm.
For people and groups that are all Apple, everybody in your crew has an iPhone or a Mac or something. What are
Mm-hmm.
your favorite ways to share photos and videos?
Well, my all-time favorite way really is iCloud links. It requires, of course, that you have an iCloud account. But the reason that I like it is you can share a zillion pictures, or you can share two, or one for that matter. But what you get is the full high resolution picture with the metadata, with whatever notes you've made, and it can go directly into somebody else's iCloud library. So if you're truly sharing, if it's like a family thing where you want everybody to have this photo of the group or
That you
whatever,
just took or the
you
party
just
table or whatever.
yeah, exactly. I mean, uh, it's easy to do. Um, And
So while you're on that point, I just want to
yeah,
say you should know that you're giving away all the data about that photo as well.
yes.
So there's
Well,
not a way to say keep it private and just show the image and remove the metadata, the geolocation, or anything like any of the names you've tagged or anything like that. So wouldn't all of that go with it as well?
there is actually now an option
Okay,
for
great.
that. And let me just
See, now he's looking at his phone.
make sure, you
Yeah.
know, half of this stuff, if I don't, they will have
Yeah.
changed it, right?
Well, I
Uh,
always have to do that when I'm teaching and stuff too. I always have to literally open my phone to give directions
right.
because it's just easier. I will say while you're looking, one of the nice things about iCloud Link too is if you have big files, it
Yes.
takes much less bandwidth. So I was at a brunch this weekend celebrating a friend's birthday, and part of it's a big birthday, and part of the gift was a slideshow that I created. And it's an MP4 file with a fair number of photos in it and music, and it was much easier for me to share the link because then you don't sort of saddle other people's phones and internet with the big file. And you could
Exactly.
share 100 photos with one
Yeah.
link too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's a great way to deliver photos to for a number of reasons, because what you're really doing, you're, as you say, I mean, the key is you're saving bandwidth. You're not, you know, hogging the Wi-Fi. What you're doing is you're essentially telling the iCloud library to collect these photos together and create a link where someone else can view and download them. And then you paste that link into
A
your
text message.
text message or email or whatever, and there it goes. It also, you can choose up to 1,000 images, so it's not, it lets you do large groups and so forth, but
Like you
it's
could organize a photo that you want to share into an album and then go into that album and select those photos that way so that you've
yes.
curated what you want to share and select them all that way. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really great. And the thing is, the link is good for a month. So at the end of a month, it expires.
Mhm.
And so it cleans things up, moves them along, and kind of saves bandwidth. To your original question, though,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I was right about this. On the phone, when you select a group of photos or a photo and hit the share button, there's this little button that says options right at the top of the screen. And options gives you a bunch of other features, which includes whether it goes out as compatible, i.e., JPEG, or whether it goes as HEIF. Like I shoot HEIF all the time, so could go as that. It gives you other features, and one of the choices that, to your point, Susan, is it lets you choose whether or not to include all the metadata from the image.
Okay,
Uh,
so I'm looking at mine and I
mhm.
have format, automatic, current, and most compatible. So automatic does what? It gives people,
It looks for it. It somehow chooses the best format. My guess
okay.
is that most of the time that's likely to be a JPEG.
Okay, so if I say
Um,
current and it's a hike file, then it's going to send it that way.
as
And
Hive,
then
yeah.
most compatible, does that change it to JPEG as well?
Yes.
Okay. And
Most
then
com- most compatible is always going to be JPEG.
JPEG. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and that just to throw in there when you're using iCloud Link, you can actually send that to Android users
You
as
can.
well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
So,
it's just a internet link. Yeah, it
yeah.
works great
it
that way.
it basically
Yeah.
creates a web gallery, and you can actually, or a PC. I mean,
Yeah.
you can take a look at it, you can see the pictures there, you can choose to download them or not. And then do you have that all photos data option at the bottom of your
I do,
screen
and
there?
mine is turned off. So what does that mean?
Um, that means that you're not including all the data.
So in order to give them everything behind the scenes about that file, location, any people I've tagged and whatnot, or
Right.
any captions or metadata or keywords, I would have to flip that on.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, mine's off by default, so I like it that way.
Yeah.
Yep.
It also, again, this depends on who you're sending it to, but now if you're shooting HEIF, it collects depth information. If your camera captures depth information, so it's just, it is a handy way to send a high quality file to
Nice.
someone else.
So
Highly
why would you
recommended.
use, yeah, so explain to us. I often use the link as well, but
Mhm.
explain to us why somebody might prefer to have a shared album on. We're just going to sort of move
Okay.
down the line of
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
ways of sharing. So
Sure.
iCloud Link can be shared actually. We started this as a how would you share with all Apple users. iCloud Link
Right.
can actually be used with anybody,
Right.
which is one reason why I like it so much, and because it shares
Yeah.
the full resolution. And you can share more. But
Right.
what about the shared album? When would you use that?
So shared album is the has two differences. One is you're essentially creating a web gallery. It says shared album, and if you're on Apple, it shows up in your Apple dialog, but it's really not on your computer. It lives separately in iCloud as a web gallery. And so what happens there is it can be viewed by PC or Mac users. If you send them their when you generate a shared album, you can get a URL that you can share with somebody else. So it is universal as it can get. Um, what it does though is you're essentially exporting the photos that you select to create this web gallery in your iCloud account. And the intention is that it is just a web gallery. So when you say sharing, you're sharing the view of it. And this is how it was originally conceived. So you can have up to, I think, 2,000 pictures, but they are downsized. The files are downsized. And this confuses a lot of people because you end up getting a photo file that will make about a 6 by 9 inch print, which is not bad. I mean, if you're doing typical 4 by 6s, then you're fine. Um, and so you can treat it as a simple sharing mechanism where the other people can download and then make prints if they choose to, or they just have the picture. The one time that I see people complain about it is if you have a group who's making photo books, and they take that picture that they downloaded and want to use it for a full page image, or they want to make a larger print of it for something like that. It's a pretty specific thing, but it bugs people. And I
So in that case, you'd be better off creating an album
With a
and
link.
creating a iCloud link to that album.
yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
exactly.
But yes, but I think one of the good uses of it though is if you are sharing frequently with somebody with an iPhone, they
Mm-hmm.
can always just pull up that shared album on their phone just like other albums,
Yes,
whereas the link
yes,
disappears in 30 days. So you need to either download it or not, but you need to make a decision. The shared album will live on your phone. So I think it's great for people who share regularly, like, pictures of kids for grandparents or
yes,
something. If they're really not going to be making books with full page spreads, which let's face it, most people don't, they just look at these photos on their phones or their
right.
computers or, that's where I think the shared album really shines, is it's just there on
It's
the
it's
phone,
more it's
on the
more of a
iPhone, not on an Android, but if you're
right.
with iPhone users.
Yeah, it's more of a living
Yeah.
document
Yeah,
in
because you can
essence.
continue to swap images in and out.
Yeah.
So if you travel a lot and you want to share that album with your family, say,
Yep.
hey, you can keep up with me here. That's a great way to do that.
It is, and
Yeah.
people can make comments on it. They can, if you give them permission, they can add their own photos to it. I mean, it's really a clever idea, and I think, the only downside, the only complaint I ever really hear about it is the idea
Quality.
that you're not getting the full image, the
Right.
real image, but so much of the time we don't anyway. I mean,
But
people down.
but that's not unusual. When you look at other software,
Right.
I think,
Yeah.
we run into that issue as well.
Yep.
So yeah.
And
Yeah.
the reason for that is simply the companies don't want to pay for the extra storage. I mean,
Right.
that's the reason,
Well,
Yeah.
and you
really.
also want it to load fast. I mean,
Yes.
there's practical reasons for it as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's been around for a long time. They haven't really changed the rules of it in a long time. Um, who knows who knows where that will all go, but it is a great tool. And when you put it out there as a universal web gallery with a URL, it can be, it is a very handy way to share pictures across platforms. So
Nice.
yeah.
All right. I think we covered that pretty well. Our
Yep.
next topic is
It's like we're going like
hierarchy.
simple to complex here.
Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
Just a programming note that you've reached the end of part one in our conversation with Paul about what's new in Apple Photos. We decided to break up our interview into 2 episodes as we really enjoyed our conversation and it went really long. In part two, we mentioned his new training course, Find Your Photos Fast, How to Use the New Apple Photos on iPhone. So we wanted to share now that Paul has a discount code just for our listeners. You can take advantage of it by using the code IPO Summer, all uppercase capitals, at checkout, and you'll receive $10 off the regular price. This code is also listed on our resources page at insidephotoorganizing.com. Enjoy! That's it for our show today. Remember, you can find this episode on all of your favorite podcast apps. Be sure to click follow so you can stay up to date with the latest in photo organizing. We'll catch you next month.